What is going on, everybody? It is Kiroto, coach of the Orlando Muse, and I am here for my draft analysis for the UNPL Season 4 Academy. We got a lot of mods to talk about, so I'm going to jump right into it. We were pick 12 out of 12. We were last. And that puts me in a weird position for building because, one, it tells me that every single mon I get, I'm going to get in pairs because I have the wheel. So I'm the end of round 1 and I'm the start of round 2. So everything I get is going to be gotten in pairs. 1. 2, it puts me in a position where I know that the mon that I'm going to get isn't necessarily the greatest. It's not going to be any of the new stuff. It's not going to be any of the things that are conventionally viewed as good. It's not going to be a Dragapult, a Valiant, a Great Tusk. At least that's what I would have said in any other league, because, oh my god, we had Dragapult make it to 10th. We had Valiant make it to 8. And somehow, beyond my understanding, I got Great Tusk. This mon does everything. It gets rocks. It's the best spinner in the game. Its dual stabs hit most of the game, and its coverage is incredible. It gets electric coverage for bulky waters. It gets dark coverage for psychic and ghosts. It gets steel coverage for fairies. It can beat all of its weaknesses. It can do literally anything. It can be a wall. It can be a breaker. It can be a cleaner. There is nothing this mon can't do. So I felt it was a perfect mon to build a team around. Now, what do we pair with this? Well, it likes to get up hazards. It likes to keep hazards on our side of the field. So what mon can I pair with it that enforces that? You get one of the best hazard removal blockers in the game in Goldango. Not only is it immune to hazard removal in the fact that it's a ghost type and a spin blocker, and its ability, good as gold, which not only nullifies hazard removal, but any status move, period. This mon cannot be statused. That's insane. Plus the fact that it has one of the best defensive typings ever, in 9 resistances and 3 immunities. There is very few things that Great Tusk and Goldango can't beat together. This mon gets incredible setup with Nasty Plot. It gets incredible coverage in Dazzling Gleam, Power Gem for those fires that it doesn't like. It gets psychic coverage, it gets electric coverage, and it can also run Trick, which isn't an option that I have with Great Tusk. So I can just lock certain mons into moves to get walled by Great Tusk so I can set up with it. So I felt these two worked really well together. Now, continuing on with the draft, I wanted to get a good dragon. I feel good dragons are kind of few and far apart in this generation. There's like Garchomp, Bax, the newly added Lotties, and Kyurem. From kind of middling in former generations to getting incredible buffs over the last 2 generations, this mon has shot up in potential for me. Now, this mon gets Dragon Dance, and while it was formerly only viewed as a special attacker, their base attack stats are the same. They're both 130. So the fact that it gets something to boost its already decently high speed and incredible attack stat, plus Scale Shot and Loaded Dice, these 3 things shoot Kyurem up in terms of potential. I'd say this mon rivals Baxcalibur, not only because of their same typing, but because they basically do the same thing. And sure, Kyurem's a little weaker, but Kyurem's also faster, and I think in most situations, that's more valuable. I think having that extra, 8 base speed allows it to deal with so many more threats than Excalibur does. And sure, it doesn't have a Glaive Rush, but it still has incredible coverage. It trades that for actually having a usable special attack stat. It was a special attacker for generations. It still has Freeze Dry, which is incredible. It still has things like Focus Blast, like Flash Cannon, and while those aren't going to be used as much because it now has an actual use for its physical attack stat, it's still there. It's still just as threatening as it's ever been, and it's one of the best dragons in this generation, and I intend to prove that. Now, to pair with Golden Go and Kyurem, I wanted a really good fairy. I also wanted another rocker, and in that group, there's not many options. There's Clefable and Screamtail, which is better than most people give it credit for. This Mon is a monster defensively, and while it's kind of lacking offensively, it has speed that isn't really rivaled in many defensive Mons. It outspeeds the Lotties, it outspeeds Lycanroc Dusk, it outspeeds most of the threats in this format, outside of, the main two in Valiant and Dragapult. And to back it up, it gets incredible status moves. It gets Baton Pass, it gets Rocks, it gets Encore, it gets Perish Song, it gets Roar, it gets Sub, it gets Wish, and it's top 5 wishes in the game, I think, in terms of HP values. This Mon is such a good defensive backbone, and it will help Tusk and Golden Go and Kyurem all do the things they want to do, while also being an incredible support Mon to the rest of the team. So that's why I picked it in round 4. Now, heading into round 5, I wanted to start my Firewater Grass Core. I saw that 2 Mons were still on the field, and one that I don't think was going to go anytime soon. So I decided to pick up one of my Terra Captains, one of, I think, the best Terra Captains currently available in this kind of format. I took Electrode. Now, the first thing you see when you look at this Mon is speed, of course. I really value fast electrics in draft, and this Mon is only outsped by Regieleki. That's it. And it'll speed tie with the other Electrode, which it did go drafted, but I don't really think is going to be a problem. But this Mon really struggles with coverage. When you look at what it gets grass and electric coverage, and that's it. It gets Foul Play as a little something, but it needs Terra to be able to hit the Mons that it struggles with. Luckily, I have Terra. So we have Terra Electric, because you have to take one of the stat types, and I think Electric is just better than Grass. We have Terra Ice, which allows me to hit Grounds and Dragons, and we have Fairy, which is just a better defensive type and also allows me to hit Dragons. Electric Fairy coverage hits a lot of things, and Bolt Beam coverage is recognized in such a widespread term for a reason. And the fact that it's attached to a Mon that is basically always going first, and doesn't have awful offensive stats. It's base 80, and middle in bulk, but it's bulkier than you think it is. Having Terra gives it more utility than you'd think it would at first glance. and I think it's going to do incredibly well on this team for that reason. Now, going from our grass type to our fire type, we ended up getting Talonflame. So I picked up this mon for 3 reasons. One, it still gets defog, and in a generation that a lot of mons lost defog and it doesn't seem like we're getting it back through DLC, I think having defog is incredibly valuable, and I like to have 2 removers on my teams, so this fills that role. 2, this mon gets incredible utility. It gets Tailwind, it gets Taunt, it gets Roost, it gets Switch Initiative in U-turn. This mon gets incredible resources, including Will-O-Wisp, which I think in a format that's so offensive, and a lot of those offensive threats are physical, it's nice to have a way to check them through things like Will-O-Wisp and Flame Body. And 3, this mon has incredible setup. It gets Sword Stance, Agility, and Bulk Up. That's all it needs. And with Bulk Up, this mon becomes incredibly fat through things like Will-O-Wisp and Roost and Bulk Up. And sure, that's 3 moves, and I only get a 4. But again, that's fine. This mon only really needs to get off burns, get Switch Initiative, sometimes not necessarily at the same time. And if it wants to, it can break. It can run defensive sets like sub bulk up rest. Yes, it does. I was thinking off the cuff there. I'm nice like that. But this mon has so much potential, and it's also incredibly fast. It is going to help tremendously in letting my Great Tusks and my Kyurem, those type of mons, excel offensively. So, from the grass to the fire to now the water, I'm shocked that this mon made it to round 7. It's such a powerhouse, and it can do a lot. I don't understand how Manaphy made it to round 7. I mean, technically, I'm the start of round 7, but regardless, we have Manaphy, and this mon got buffed this generation. This mon got Take Heart. Now, if you don't know what Take Heart is, which is reasonable, it's been banned in most of the leagues I've watched. Take Heart is basically Calm Mind, but it clears status. That's absurd. Why do you get set up and to remove yourself of status? If I get paralyzed, like I have been in some of my mocks recently, I can just Take Heart and it's gone. If you want to Toxic me to put me on a timer, you can't. I have Take Heart. But beyond that, it still has Tail Glow, and Tail Glow is ridiculous for setup. +3 immediately. That's ridiculous. And with a mon that's base 100 across the board, it's very hard to break this thing, especially since it gets acid armor. You have to go out of your way to build for Manaphy. And that's on top of having a Great Tusk, having a Kyurem, having a Golden Go. Like, the offensive pressure on this team is insane. And on top of that, it still has utility. It gets screens, it gets knockoff, it gets U-turn and flip turn, so I don't have to run flip turn into water absorb mons. This mon is incredible. And the fact that it got to me this late in the draft blows my mind. So, pivoting from Manaphy, we have one of my recently found favorites in Draft League currently. We got Overquill. Now, I do have a singular problem with this mon. It's a poison type that doesn't resist Fairy. But in exchange, it's also a poison type that's immune to Psychic. So, there's a little bit of give and take between its typings. But beyond that, this mon is incredible. It has phenomenal utility. It gets Destiny Bond, it gets Haze, it gets Pain Split, it gets Spikes and Toxic Spikes, it gets Taunt, and it gets Toxic. But it also has its signature move in Barb Barrage, where not only is it Venoshock, but it also has a 50% chance to poison. And with a mon that loves spreading poison around like this, I couldn't think of a better signature move to give it. And then we get to its abilities. This mon also gets Poison Point, which I believe stacks with Barb Barrage. Now, I don't think those percentages are additive. I'm pretty sure they're multiplicative, but still, that's like a 70% chance to poison with one move. That's insane. On top of that, it gets Intimidate. This mon opens the door for things like Manaphy, for things like Great Tusk, for anything that is struggling with a strong mon sitting in front of it. I bring in Overquill, I get an Intimidate off, and then I just switch out. It takes a hit, it goes. And considering that this mon is fast enough to outspeed most of the defensive mons, but slow enough to not outspeed the offensive mons, it's a really good sponge. On top of the fact that it has pretty good bulk and base 85 HP and base 95 defense. This mon is incredible, and I'm so happy to have it on this team, especially paired with things like Screamtail and Great Tusk and Golden Go, which enforces hazards even further. So, we have some Terra points left. In this league, we have 18 Terra points spread across 2 to 3 Terra Captains. So, let's start using those. Coming into Terra Captain number 2, we have Lycanroc. Now, this isn't Lycanroc Dusk, unfortunately. I don't have the points to afford that. But they do basically the same thing. Lycanroc Dusk is a little stronger, Lycanroc Day is a little bit faster. The real difference between the two is Lycanroc Dusk just has a superior ability, but I'm able to compensate for that with Terra. Lycanroc Dusk has a little stronger close combats and play roughs. I can compensate for that by making those two moves stab. And I think having that is incredibly valuable. Plus, Sandrush makes this mon incredibly useful. I don't have sand currently. Wink wink. But in sand, this mon is a powerhouse. And I think my team is bulky enough to not have to worry about sand as a factor. So it's only a benefit for Lycanroc. So there's Terra Captain 2. On to Terra Captain 3. We had 4 points to use for a Terra Captain, and I just wanted like a real good physical breaker. And I think Zangoose does that pretty well. So we picked up Gadzooks. Leave a comment down below if you know what that's a reference to, by the way. I love this mon since it's been introduced. I think it has always been a little lacking in terms of power, and I think Terra is going to really help to compensate with that. We have Normal, Ghost, and we have Stellar. Stellar was interesting. Stellar is only allowed to be on Terramon 6 points and under. This is 4. I think for a normal type, it's interesting because the problem has always been oh, well, you get incredible coverage, but it doesn't hit that hard because it's not coming from stab. And I think letting a normal type have excess stab, just even if it's just for a turn, I think that's incredibly useful. And this is just an experiment. If this doesn't work, I'm fully prepared to like use a free agency trade to make that terrified. I'm prepared to do that. But I think this will work really well for this mon. This has the added benefit of also being a status absorber outside of Manaphy, that I can take poisons for mons that don't really want to deal with that. So that fills a little excess role that I think it'll do really well in. But for our final mon, we have 1 point left. All I really want is just like a tiny little extra piece of support. Maybe an extra rocker if I can get it, but also something that sets up sand for Lycanroc. So I just grabbed a little hippo. Now, I don't foresee this mon coming every week, but the weeks that it does come, it's incredibly useful. It sets up rocks, it has that as an option, it sets up sand, it has healing, it's incredibly bulky, it gets whirlwind, everything Hippowdon does. It doesn't do as well, but it's still an extra nice little niche to have. So, this mon is really just here to support Lycanroc. Again, I don't foresee it coming very often, but the weeks that I do have it, it's incredibly useful. And with that, that completes my draft analysis. I'm really happy with the team we got. I think we have a lot of very strong pieces that work well together as a unit. We have maybe a slight lack of switch initiative, but the mons that get it support the team really well and want to be switching around anyway. So I think we're fine on that front. Battles are coming up on Friday, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And yeah, I will see you all next time.